Coming up today here on the Raiders Report, we have tons of Raiders coaching news that you need to see around the OC, around the DC, and around the offensive line run game coordinator. But also, I'm going to tell you why I could see the Raiders hiring Aubrey Pleasant to be the next defensive coordinator of the Silver and Black. If you did not see the news that ended up going down, Ian Rappaport reported Rams assistant head coach and pass game coordinator, it's defensive pass game coordinator, by the way, Aubrey Pleasant has been requested to interview for the Raiders DC job and will be meeting with them today, source said. The reason why I want you to hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications is because I know I'm not the only one right now. And when I do this show, I always try to put myself in y'all's shoes. I'm a Raider fan just like all of y'all. And the number one thing that I want to hear about is OC and DC news, because raise your hand if you're sick and tired of all the Max Crosby trade rumors. And I apologize when I talk about them, but damn it, when news comes out or things that are out there, I feel like I got to talk about them. But there's a reason why we're the number one Raiders YouTube channel on the planet, and we've been the number one channel on the planet for the last 8 years. It's because nobody is going to outwork us. So if you want commitment to excellence, I'm going to bring it. If you don't know who Aubrey Pleasant is, he has been the assistant head coach and pass game coordinator with the Rams since 2024. He has worked under some really good defensive-minded coaches like Chris Shula, Raheem Morris. Now, I know Morris was not a good head coach, but Raheem Morris is a good defensive coach. Chris Shula, good defensive coach. Then you look at Sean McVay. Sean McVay, if you come from the Sean McVay tree, I'm going to be really excited. And often when I talk about the McVay tree, sometimes people hit me with, well, not all those other coaches have had success. You know where he's had a lot of success? A lot of his defensive coaches. Sean McVay guys have turned out to be really, really good defensive coordinators, and it makes me wonder because do y'all remember when Klint Kubiak at his press conference said that Mike Macdonald challenged him like on a daily basis, asking him defensive questions? Because I think that that's important quality to not only think about it from an offensive standpoint, but a defensive standpoint. And I don't know if Sean McVay does that, but I could 100% see McVay doing that just because of how great all of his coaches are. But this guy's been coaching in the NFL since 2013. So what I want to know from you is this. I want you to grade the interview. Now, if you do not know, the Raiders are going to interview Pleasant today. So they're going to interview him today. And technically, if they wanted to hire him to be the next defensive coordinator, they could do it, right? Like if they wanted to hire him, they could hire him. So grade the interview by the Raiders. Give me an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F. My answer is going to be coming up here right after this YouTube ad break. This is a B interview for the Silver and Black, and I am liking this interview. Like, I don't want that to come off as me not being through the moon, but I am a tough grader. Like an A, Jim Schwartz. A, Sean McDermott. Based on all the reports that are out there, doesn't sound like Sean McDermott's going to be even an option. And it also, Jim Schwartz is still under contract technically with the Cleveland Browns. But I don't want y'all to think that I don't think that that's a good interview, that I don't think that it would be a good hire, because that's super far from the truth. And I will prove it to you today that I believe that Aubrey Pleasant is a really good interview for the Las Vegas Raiders. So Klint Kubiak, John Spytek, Tom Brady, I see what you're doing. And coming up here on today's show, I'm going to tell you why I think the Raiders are interviewing Pleasant, and ultimately why I think the Raiders could ultimately hire Aubrey Pleasant to be the next defensive coordinator of the Silver and Black. Before I get into that, though, huge shout-out to today's sponsor, Panda Sups. I actually, right now, I'm chugging some of their nootropics to stay super, super locked in. And if you don't know, Panda Sups is owned and operated by a die-hard Raiders fan, and he's hooking y'all up with 26% off at pandasups.com. And if you want, take advantage with code Kubiak, because we're Kubiak. Now, typically, I know it's not that big of a difference, but hey, if I told you you could get an extra 1 inch or 1% bigger, would you do it? Every guy here is going, yeah, shit, man, I'd probably do it. Usually, we got 25% off. We got 26% off. It's year 2026 at pandasups.com. They just launched their new strawberry ice cream crumble. I have not tried it yet, but if I had to guess, based on all the other protein that I've had from Panda, what it reminds me of and what I think it's going to taste like is when you heard the ice cream truck rolling in your neighborhood as a kid, and I used to go out there. I used to either get the SpongeBob or I used to get the strawberry ice cream crumble. I'm usually a chocolate guy, but on a hot summer day, this I guarantee you will be a summer purchase for me, and I'm putting it in my Ninja Creamy. If you also want to see some of the other new products that Panda's got, the Burn is one that I've heard is like unbelievable to help you really just kind of melt away some of that fat. I love their aminos just because when I do have drinks on this show, I want to make sure that I can wake up the next morning and bounce back ASAP Rocky. If you're trying to get into better shape, and if you're trying to be the best version of yourself and support a Raiders fan, pandasups.com, code Kubiak for 26% off. So here to me is why I believe the Raiders are interviewing Pleasant, and ultimately why I think that he could be the next defensive coordinator of the Las Vegas Raiders. You got to look at the Sean McVay ties. Let's first think about how many Sean McVay guys the Raiders were looking at. I know that they never brought him in for an interview, but there were a lot of reports that Chris Shula was somebody on the Raiders' mind. You look at Nate Shieldhouse. You look at Mike LaFleur. Like, those were coaches that 100% the Raiders were interested in. For Pleasant, he worked with McVay from 2013 to 2016 in Washington. 2013, he was an offense assistant and a defense quality coach from 2014 to 2016. So that means Sean McVay said, you know what? I want to bring Aubrey Pleasant with me to the Rams. And not only did he bring Aubrey Pleasant with him here in Washington, brought him with the Rams at first in 2017 when McVay first got hired as the Rams cornerback coach. Then Pleasant ended up leaving. I believe he ended up going to Detroit. And then what happened? He ended up getting let go from that job. And then McVay said, hey, I want to bring this guy back. So that's three different instances where Sean McVay, I would say the number one head coach in the National Football League, said, I want Aubrey Pleasant a part of my staff. The other really important thing about Pleasant, he comes with that assistant head coach title. And I don't think that y'all should scoff at that, because if we're looking at Klint Kubiak, first-time head coach, what I think would be really important, if you can't get that older-minded defensive coordinator, can you bring in people that got assistant head coach experience, like an Aubrey Pleasant, like a Mike McCoy? Let's go to the next reason here why I think Pleasant could end up getting the job. He's got Shanahan ties. And Shanahan ties are important because Kubiak has Shanahan ties. And he worked with Kyle Shanahan in 2013 when Kyle Shanahan was the OC. Pleasant also was the offensive assistant in 2013 with Shanahan. Klint Kubiak also has those Shanahan ties. And the reason why I bring that up is I know this type of offense that Kubiak runs, it's very similar to the type of offense that Shanahan runs. So for me, I look at what Aubrey Pleasant could potentially bring to the table. And since Klint Kubiak, like, what I honestly think Kubiak's going to do is something very similar to what Mike McDonald did, where he's going to challenge his defensive guys, just like he wants his defensive guys to challenge him. So when you've worked around a similar system and you've worked around guys that have had a lot of success, that makes it easier for you to communicate. The final reason, he's a Michigan man. And I'm always going to bring up Michigan. I don't think I've ever talked about Michigan more since the Raiders hired John Spytek and Tom Brady. But Tom Brady and John Spytek, this does matter to them. And it matters to them because they believe that Michigan knows how to properly teach and knows how to properly get the most out of their football players. And Pleasant was a Michigan defensive grad assistant in 2011. He was an assistant DB coach in 2012. And since that John Spytek, Tom Brady ties, again, to me, this is probably just a little bit of a cherry on top. But when you have a GM that literally has a book called The Michigan Man, and I don't know if y'all saw the Joe Judge press conference thing at Ole Miss, I would never let my son ever play for a man like Joe Judge based on what he said about players shouldn't have to deal with their kids. You should make your wife do that. When you know that there's leaders out there, and I would never want my kid to play for a guy like that. The reason why that I bring that up, that type of shit I don't really think would happen as much in Michigan. Now, I get it, Sharon Moore, that was a bad situation this past season. No doubt about it. But I do believe in my heart of hearts that Tom Brady and John Spytek want to build a program, because today's age and age in the NFL and professional sports, you got so many people that are me guys. To get a rebuild going, you need team guys. You know when JPJ said, hey, I'm going to play for the team on the front to bless the name on the back? I want more guys like that. And I do think when you come from the University of Michigan, you're going to be instilled in what it means to be a part of a legendary program. So here's going to be a question for you, because as it stands right now, the only two defensive coordinators that the Raiders have requested to interview are Rob Leonard and Aubrey Pleasant. If you had to pick right now, which DC would you roll with for the Silver and Black? Type RL for Rob Leonard. Type AP for Aubrey Pleasant. My answer is going to be coming up here after this YouTube ad break. This might surprise you. I'm going to type my AP. I see what the live poll is right now. I see what a lot of the comments are. And I want people to understand. Y'all know how much I love. You guys know how much I love Rob Leonard. No doubt about it. I would rather have Aubrey Pleasant be our defensive coordinator than Rob Leonard. And I say that for two big reasons. One, Pleasant to me is more qualified for the position when you look at resume and you know I'm a Sean McVay guy. When Sean McVay is bringing you back 3 different times to be a part of his staff, that is like, I think, one of the biggest compliments that you can get. The fact that he's worked underneath Sean McVay, and a lot of his defensive coaches have gone on to be very good coaches, that's important. The other part, and maybe I'm going to be a little bit, I don't know what the right word is. I want the most that I can get. And I feel like 2026 is our year. If we could keep Rob Leonard as the defensive line coach, and if you could give him an upgrade, you give him a pay raise, like, to me, that's outstanding. The best defensive staff that we could potentially have is if you brought in Aubrey Pleasant and then you kept Rob Leonard as a defensive line coach. Yeah, there's probably a chance that we end up losing Rob, and I don't want to lose Rob, no doubt about it. But I will say this. I would be happier if the Raiders hired Aubrey Pleasant than Rob Leonard. So I know all y'all know how much I love Rob, but I hope that that also speaks and shows you how excited I was about this Aubrey Pleasant interview. So as it stands right now, the 3 interviews that the Raiders have out there, you got Rob Leonard, your defensive line coach for D.C., Aubrey Pleasant, the assistant head coach for the D.C. job, and then Frisman Jackson, the Seahawks wide receiver coach for the offensive coordinator job. But here's also the cool part. Last up, we got even more Raiders coaching news to discuss, because there's been 2 things that have happened since I have decided to go, not since I've gone live, like really right before I went live. And if you're not watching this video live, I'm live on the Raiders Report. It's happy hour, baby. So Ian Rappaport said this: Seahawks defensive pass game specialist and DB coach Karl Scott has been in the mix for the defensive coordinator jobs, including Arizona, is planning to remain in Seattle. This is a big win for the Seahawks. And 2 things here it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder, could he get a promotion in Seattle? Could Aiden Dirty come over here with us? I personally think he's staying in Seattle. He's probably going to remain that DB coach. But Karl Scott was a name that I brought up, I'm going to say 3 weeks to a month ago on this show, about, hey, this is the name to watch out for if Klint Kubiak ends up getting hired to be the next Raiders head coach. Karl Scott's been with Seattle from 2022 to 2025, but he had Klint Kubiak ties when Kubiak was the OC in Minnesota back in 2021. So for Karl Scott to stay there, it just makes me wonder, could other defensive guys stay in Seattle underneath Mike Macdonald? More news coming in here. This one's from Fowler. The Raiders requested Seahawks assistant Justin Otten for run game coordinator, but Seattle blocked the request per sources. Otten, the Seahawks run game specialist assistant O-line, is one of 4 in-house candidates for Seattle's OC job. So do you remember when Seattle requested to interview Jake Peetz, Andrew Janocko, Justin Otten, and Mac Brown? When I look at this, I think of a multitude of different things. One, this tells me the Raiders were interested in Justin Otten for the run game coordinator job, not OC, which makes me think Andrew Janocko, Jake Peetz, the top 2 people that I thought the Raiders would bring in for their OC, I still think that those are going to be the guys. I think Peetz is going to take the Seahawks job, and I think Janocko is going to take the Raiders job. If Janocko takes the Seahawks job, well, then I think we're going to get Jake Peetz over here with us with the silver and black. If you're wondering why can the Seahawks block, it's because it's a lateral move. Any lateral move in the NFL, you can block. Like last year, the Raiders, I believe that they ended up blocking somebody because they wanted to hire Patrick Graham for their defensive coordinator, and the Raiders ended up blocking it. I couldn't remember. Was it the Jags last year? I think you're right. But the Raiders, they ended up blocking it, which, again, you're allowed to do. The other thing, though, that I mentioned, and I put out a video probably 2-3 days ago about Raiders coaching predictions, I said that I believed Rick Dennison would be the Raiders offensive line coach. So because the Raiders brought in Otten for run game coordinator, not O-line coach. I think that Otten's going to stay in Seattle, and I believe the Raiders are going to get Rick Dennison to be their O-line or also run game coordinator. More news coming in here. Adam Schefter, Patriots quarterback coach Ashton Grant, has decided to remain in New England rather than discuss the vacant offensive coordinator job with the Las Vegas Raiders. Y'all know that Drake May's been my number one quarterback in the 2024 NFL draft way before the draft ever even happened. If you don't believe me, go check out the videos. But, let's be real here, y'all. Did we really think that somebody that works underneath Josh McDaniels was going to come to the Las Vegas Raiders? In the same exact breath, do we really want somebody who's worked underneath Josh McDaniels to be the offensive coordinator of the Las Vegas Raiders? I know sometimes it hurts getting turned down, but I feel like this is getting turned down with somebody that I didn't even really want to go on a date with to begin with. Before we head on out of here, though, if you haven't already gotten your hands on some St. Patrick's merch, hey, chatsports.com/LVGreen. That link's down in the comments. It's going to be in the description of today's video. And at the end of the day, I want people to rock all of our gear because, of course, it helps our company grow. I also want people to see the Sin City Drinking Team shirt and be like, hell yeah, man, I'll watch the Raiders Report too. Also, I never have anything to wear on St. Patty's Day. So this is a little bit of green. It's a little bit of Raiders Report. It's a little bit of the Raiders mixed up in one. Sounds like a hell of a St. Patrick's Day party to me. If you don't follow me on social media, Mitchell Renz 365. I'm literally everywhere there. Venmo, Cameo, Twitter, everywhere. If it's Mitchell Renz 365, I'm going to be there. Shout out to all y'all that are pulled up here on the program. And again, if you're not watching this live, I'm live here on the Raiders Report for a little Friday happy hour.